is people who are perfect strangers, they start playing together and suddenly they're friends. And people who already know each other become even closer. And that is a paradox because they pretend to be someone else and yet they get to know each other better.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Today, I'm really excited to introduce our guest DM that we have today, Maciej. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, my name is Maciej Wojciechowsky. I am a corporate DM from Poland, and I've been asked to do this interview in a podcast that is called Forever DM, which is a perfect name for everyone who started DMing, because after a while, we probably find ourselves in a situation where we are kind of trying to remember when was the last time that we actually played as a player, because everyone asks us to DM. So that happens to most of us after a while, especially if we are kind of good at it. Actually, DMing is something that I wanted to do from the get-go. Is actually why I started playing D&D as a player. I basically started to play because I wanted to learn how to play to be able to DM later. Because what I am is basically a failed writer. So I started to create many stories that I didn't finish because I was never happy with how the style turned out. But I had the urge to create stories and later to make people part of these stories. And I've actually always wanted to do this. I've been doing this for 3 years now, basically. But this is something, but I'm 41 years old, and I've realized that this is something that I've actually wanted to do all my life. Before I just didn't have the opportunity to do that, because for you living in the US, you are basically in ground zero of it all. This is very natural for you. I mean, you grew up with this as a kid, and the first time I've heard about it was late 80s, early 90s, but I've heard about it because I've seen it. I've seen it in a movie in Steven Spielberg's E.T. I was always amazed with interactive stories. So then I found out about paragraph novels. So you actually create your own adventure while reading it. So that was the next thing, and then video games happened. But then I got kind of bored with video games. What I have actually missed is the human contact in all of this, because that is what makes RPGs, tabletop RPGs, special. The people that are with you sitting at the table. And this is actually what was missing. I've really wanted to learn how to play, so the first thing I did was watch a lot of streams. So yes, I am a child of Critical Role. That was my first contact, and I watched it all, and I learned a lot from there. But then I realized that I cannot not play and to DM. I have to learn how to play. I have to be a player. So the trouble was I did not know a single person who was playing. No one, no one around me. So I got discouraged back then. So I basically was like a person who was trying to get in, but I didn't know anyone. I heard discouraging stories that the people who do this might be strange and they might not be welcoming to me. But then I started to play, and I've had a campaign with these perfect strangers that I found online on Facebook, and that was really great. Then I found out why so many people wanted to play this and why I want to play this. Because the story that we've created was really special, and the bonds that I've created, which was really funny the first time that I met them, because I was the only one that didn't have long hair. I was the only one that didn't have like a t-shirt with a metal band. They kind of looked at me with, what kind of person will he be? And then I started talking with my dwarven voice and something, and they've instantly said, okay, he's one of us. I really wanted to do this for my friends. So actually, my first DMing attempt was a total failure. It was even a preemptive failure, a pre-failure because it didn't happen. I've actually created the stories especially for a few of my friends, a few of my closest friends, and I wanted them to play it. And when the time came, two of them didn't show up at all. One of them didn't want to play, so it all fell apart. And I had the story, I had everything. I even started to build stuff because I've with everything I've really gotten into crafting as well. And and when I was at work, I've noticed I told my manager that I wanted to do this, and this is really cool. It's better than video games, and it would be a great team building exercise for people at work. And he told me that this is a good idea, make it happen, and I made it happen. And it became a campaign that we've played for 2 years. Yes, and it was really special. They ended as a big group with 7 people, I think. So that was a big group for a first-time DM. I will never make that mistake again. I everything they do now, every group that they have right now is 5 people max. That is what it takes, because it is not only for me hard to handle a big group, but for them to make a single decision to go left or to go right, it takes ages in a bigger group than 4 or 5 people. My business center had, so they wanted to first show people with original hobbies. So as a result, I actually ended up on a huge billboard outside of an office building in just by the main road in the city. And then they suggested to me that I should create an RPG club in the business center, which I did with a friend, the friend that started playing because of me in the campaign. And we've created sort of our version of Adventurers League. It's basically short adventures that last, let's say, 3 sessions, a single adventure. So
it's like mini, not one shots, but like mini, like a module.
I cannot I cannot make a session that lasts for, let's say, 6 hours. What I have to do is I have to create a session that lasts, let's say, 3 hours tops, because we always meet after work. We start playing at 5 and we finish at 8. So that's 3 hours. And in reality, it's not 3 hours, it's 2.5, because everybody gets together. I set everything up, so that's like 20 something minutes. So basically every session was 2.5 hours, and that was a different experience, because these were complete perfect strangers. So I did not know these people. What we did is we just gave titles of the adventures that we have, and people basically signed up. I had 5 spots, and my friend, she had 5 spots on her adventure, and we did this. And of course, since the world has started to end, everything is done remotely, which I'm not happy about, because as I've told you, I am a crafting DJ. So all the minis, all the scenery I did, all the temples and all the buildings I did are at home, not on the table, and not in the game where they should be.
So all of your maps are like 3D, like you build all of the terrain and all that.
Sure. I built some cottages. I built some houses. I built a temple. I've built some modular things as well, to be able to reuse them in different settings. I understand that there are different schools of DMing. Some people do not actually use any of that stuff. I kind of think of these as visual aids. I kind of miss, seeing people's faces, because when I DM, I also incorporate just body language and just my facial expressions. And when I don't have that, I have to rely on my voice, and I'm not that good of a voice actor to convey everything. So, and we do not use cameras just to make sure the connection is smooth.
My recommendation to you then would be somebody get Zoom, because we originally did our campaign on Discord and it just wasn't great. But when we switched to Zoom, it fixed every problem that we had. Zoom is really good with not picking up that background noise, because that's how we do ours. So in our campaign, we have 6 people and we've never met. We live all over the world and we do it through Zoom. But since you have all of these things created that you use, your props and all that, would you consider yourself more of a prepper than an improv?
Oh no, I actually do a lot of improv. Actually do improv when I don't have anything prepared, basically. And I do that, and I every other session give the steering wheel to my players. I do, what do you want to do in this particular location? And they always surprise me, and they always think of something to do. I was drastically underslept, if that is the right word, and I knew I had a session, and they were basically on a ship. There was nothing planned. I asked them, "What do you want to do?" And they said, "Well, we want to search the ship." And I had nothing prepared. So, in a split second decision, I said, yes, there is a single room that's closed. How do we get there? And in the time that they wanted to open the door, I've invented what's behind the door. And it turned out into a quite huge side quest. I'm sure they will enjoy this, because this will be a mystery to solve. Improv has to be the biggest part of it all, because if you do not give your players at least the illusion of choice, then the world will not seem alive. The people will always surprise you. That is why you're playing with people, not with the computer, because that is enjoyable. The DM that I brought into this hobby, she was really, really, really scared of improvising. And because she is an over preparer for sure. I mean, she has like every NPC has a 3 generations backstory, or I mean, it is like amazing. The maps that she draws, everything is so artistic. She writes letters that are beautiful. It's amazing. But because we are supposed to do a lot of these adventures for the business center, she was kind of getting tired, and she also had a hard time for a moment, and she says, "I have not prepared anything. There's nothing special that will happen today." And I told her, just wing it. Just wing it. They know what they are supposed to do. You told them last session that they need this and this and this. They will lead you, and you will just react to them. Don't worry about it. And she was going to that session with this anxiety about this, and she walked out and she was amazed, because what happened was exactly what I've told her would happen, is that she reacted to the players, and together it was one of the most enjoyable sessions that she had, because she was improving and they were improving. They were basically riffing off each other, which was really great, and it's part of the fun. And I understand that people might have a hard time with this when they are starting, that they don't know what will happen. They don't know if some of the players that they have might be troublemakers, might be fire starters, might be instigators. It always is a possibility that some player just out of sheer boredom might want to do something that actually might derail the campaign. So it is fair to warn your players, especially if they are first-time players, that all actions have consequences. If you kill someone, you will be branded a killer and you will be searched for, let's say. A good tip to first-time DMs: what to do with so-called murder hobo wannabes in the beginning. If people are testing you, because that's what happens. So the players will start to test you, how far they can pull something, how far they can go with certain things, and for instance, they kill an innocent. and nobody will find out because they were the only two people in the room, and they get away with it. They will not be searched. So I unleashed the Revenant on them. So the Revenant is a vengeful spirit, which will not stop, because this is a curse. This will not stop unless the person who the killer dies, or it is being banded, discarded with a wish spell. So that is a high level spell. So that is a but also, if you have a person, if you have a player that has done this, and he or she has killed an innocent, that is, first of all, a very good thing to do in a campaign, because this is a reoccurring villain. Because if it comes and you kill it, the spirit just is freed from the body and is looking for the next dead body to inhabit to attack again. When it comes to the mechanics of this, you roll a d6 to find out if the revenant will attack this night or not. Every long rest you do this. So you roll a d6, and with a 6, the revenant attacks. So that is a good lesson not to kill innocents.
Not to kill it.
Yes.
Don't be a murder hobo.
Don't be a murder hobo. So that's what I did, and it actually became a very unifying factor for the whole team, because the whole team had to take care of this problem, and they had to protect one of theirs, and they had to find a solution to this. Also, when it comes to campaigns, I am really not afraid of the cliches. And I'm really not afraid to do stuff that is standard. So, experienced players might have a problem with this. They might say, "But I've seen this a bunch of times. Come on, this? I mean, we all did this." But since I have new players most of the time, I have to introduce them to cliches to be able to, for them to be able to understand, innovation later on, and for them to create innovative player characters later on. So that's why I think it's okay. The first I had this moment when I was playing with these guys that introduced me to this hobby, and we managed to kill a minotaur. The other team member was a lizard folk ranger, and he asked me, "Do I want a horned helmet with the minotaur's horns?" And I said, "Well, hell yeah, a horned helmet for a dwarf. I mean, that is like a match made in heaven. Come on." Yes. And the DM said, "But that is so cliche for a dwarf, right? That is so, but I love it. I love it. This is it. Horned helmet for a dwarf. I mean, perfect." So just don't be afraid of cliches. That's my advice for DMs. Just don't be afraid to put in a mimic, a gelatinous cube. So these standard villains that are the game's trademark. These villains are everywhere. Don't be afraid of it, because these are things that make the game great. Later on, if your players are experienced, don't do that again. Or do you have some first time players? You should show them what this thing is about. Of course, if you have some experienced players, you can mess with their heads like our DM did with ours. So they put in a shipwreck mimic. So that was a huge challenge.
I'm such a big fan. I love me a good mimic. I've only used one once, but it very quickly became like one of my favorites. I'm itching to use one again. Love mimics.
Yeah, it's one of these things that create paranoia within your players, which is actually so sweet for a DM when your players are paranoid when they go into a room and they expect danger from every corner.
Now that did backfire on one of my making my players paranoid, because like they went through some stuff and then I was like, okay, you're going to need to rest. So I gave them this nice, beautiful meadow for them to take a long rest, and they could be good to go, because there was more stuff up ahead.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we don't trust it. This is too weird. We should not be here. We need to go now. And I was like, I made this for you to sleep.
Yeah. So So I made my players so distrustful of NPCs. They are rolling insight checks every conversation right now. Every conversation, because I've lied to them because they didn't use insight checks at all. So I've started, putting NPCs who lied to them, and they found out later on that this was a lie. And I told them, well, you didn't do the insight checks that I've told you that you can do. You can ask if you want to do an insight check. It's really fun with new players, the way that you can actually trick them, and then you tell them, well, I told you that I can do this. Didn't you pay attention? But it is always great. It was always great because they actually enjoy being tricked. It's like prestidigitation. It's like magic. It's like, it's like a card trick. Like, you don't really want to know how it's done.
Every DM kind of has like their own little, like they have their thing. Some DMs love combat. Some DMs love the RP. I love, okay, well, for RP, I'm a huge proponent of RP. I like really heavy RP. However, plot twists are my thing. I love a good plot twist. Yeah. What would you say is your like niche?
My thing that I do, and I love doing that, and I love things with that have to do with war, politics, espionage, secret societies. So this kind of geopolitical thing is basically the 2-year campaign. Was about preventing a war, an invasion on a country. And there was some espionage in there and everything. But then this new campaign that I'm starting to develop will be colonial. It will be something. It will be modeled after North America when the British and the French were colonizing. There were a lot of indigenous people on there, which are also tribes fighting against each other, and they are allying with these newcomers against each other. So this is a very interesting thing to do. The new world, basically. So that is my next idea. So I usually take something from our culture or history with the 2-year campaign is basically, and I've admitted this to some of the players, this was actually about Poland and situation after World War II. I've modeled everything around Poland. I flipped it on its head a little bit. They might not notice it, changed the names and something. So I incorporated a lot of geopolitical themes in there. That's what I do when I create stories. And when it comes to just running the game session by session, what is my priority? Yes, it's role playing as well. I do a lot of characters. I do a lot of voices. I found out that it is, my players told me later that it is a pleasure to watch, but some of them told me that it's discouraging because they don't want to play role play themselves because they might not be as good as me, which is absurd. I told them that they don't do that. I mean, even if you don't do like a huge performance, it's completely different voice or something. Just do something else. But it is really tough to break out of your shell. And I don't demand this from my players. I do demand for them to speak in their character's voice, meaning don't say, well, I say this to the person, not reported speech, but actually say this, actually speak this. So basically role play, because this is what it's all about. And this is mandatory on my sessions. My priority is the story, because as I've told you, I am a failed writer. So my priority is a story that I've developed, and emotions that I want them to feel. That is what stories make you do. They make you think, and they make you feel emotions. They make you do two things. That is what we have been doing since the dusk of humanity, since the beginning of humanity. because I mean, storytelling is really important. It is a medium of conveying values, issues, emotions, and ideas. That's what we do. Because why not write a book why something is important? Sure, you can write a book thus telling people why something is important. But if you create a story, if you put characters in it that feel, that think, then it becomes personal, and that what RPG is. It's storytelling with other people. Collaborative storytelling is the right word. So you have to. For me, the story is most important, and the stories of the characters are important. These plot twists, these things that happen, are also the things that make you feel special when it comes to the player. That is why backstories in the campaigns are needed, and some of the players don't get that. And there was this player that is my failure because she actually did not understand what this thing is about at all. She was convinced that she can win. She can win with, I mean, against other players. She didn't understand it at all. She was not paying attention when I was doing my presentation about this. And this girl, she decided to play a 90-year-old a human wizard. Yeah, she didn't role play him at all. Meaning, this is an old man. This is a really good thing to play. You can change your voice. You can play around with it. No, she didn't role play at all. She basically gave me a backstory with no plot hooks whatsoever. Nothing. Nothing. I could not do anything with this. So she wrote this. I had a wife and she died. I had a child and the child died. Everything. So everything was done and buried. And I was reading. Yes, single plot hook. I had a single plot hook that she wrote that the character had a wife and the wife tried to poison him. Yes, single plot hook. Something to go on. From that time, I've realized that it really, for some people, it's really hard to create a backstory that has these plot hooks that I can use, this interesting plot hooks. And I've developed these questions, these helpful questions that can help you to write something that I can use later on. And with my other players, it worked. My other player in the beginning, she brought me a backstory that was no backstory at all. It was actually a description of the character. It was what the character is like, not what the character did. So it was not a story of what happened. It was, I had to go back to her and tell her, you need to change that. And she kind of took it hard because she creates comic books. So she took this as a critique of her character. She took it hard, but then I explained everything and she understood that we need, as DMs, we need something to claw to, basically. You know the theory of knives. It's a theory of knives. Why is it called the theory of knives? Is you create a knife. You craft it. You spend your time on it. You create a beautiful blade with, it's really beautiful, artistic, and you hand it to the DM, and the DM takes the knife, the blade, and he stabs you with it. That's what the knives are in your backstory, to stab you. Yeah,
that's why in all of my characters I put personal knives in, so that it hurts even more because I hate.
I mean, exactly. So that's why they're called knives too, because sometimes it hurts. What's the family situation like? Your father, your mother, do you have a wife or a child or whatever? What happened? Are they alive? A suggestion that they might not be. If not, how they died, or no, whatever. DMs need to help their players with this. It's not enough to just give an intro into the world that you've created. You actually have to help your players create your characters' backstories to anchor these characters in the world that you've created. So that's another part of the collaborative storytelling, that you take part in creating your players' characters.
Now, since you play with colleagues, do you find that it tends to it's a little more sillier campaign or a little less weighted?
It actually is both. It's both. It's this campaign that we've recently wrapped up. It actually had some themes that were really dark and really serious. There was some stuff that was really heavy and not a laughing matter at all. But then the players sometimes behaved in ways that are strange, funny. They visited brothels, they've consumed alcohol and other things, and they've fumbled and failed across, many continents, and so many things that were hilarious. What was the biggest prize for me in all of this is what, because we most of us in our team, we played together, as we couldn't stop talking about it at work. So that made the other team members really jealous. But it's so engaging. It's so engaging intellectually. It's so engaging emotionally that you start talking about it. These are new players. I wanted to show them what they can do in this world, because that was their biggest doubt. That was their biggest question in the beginning. What can I do in a video game? As soon as you start the video game, you just start, doing everything to see what you can do, what objects you can move or whatever. This is the same. You start touching walls or everything just to know what your limitations are. And in this case, I wanted to show them what you can do. At the time, my team consisted of 2 men and 5 women. They all went into a tavern, which was a meeting place right outside the port, and they were organizing to get on a boat, on a ship. So I've created this barmaid character, and I've suggested that I've decided that she will flirt with the first woman that will come into the tavern. I would like to remind you again, there were 5 women in this team. The first woman that comes into the door, the first character, is played by a girl from my team, which is actually lesbian in real life, which became so. I had a problem with that, because how would she react to this? Am I pandering, or am I making fun of this, or what? I was really afraid that she might get offended, but she didn't. And she was fine. She actually enjoyed this, and it was fun. And she is actually the person that started DMing thanks to this. So in cases like this, you always have to look at your players and know how far you can push, and it's actually up to them to know how far you can go with certain things. And I found that out, that I've actually hold myself back, and I sometimes even stop role playing at all, and I've actually asked, how far do you want to go with this? And at times I hear, yeah, I want to go all the way. So I don't actually describe scenes of intercourse. Don't worry. I usually say I have this shtick that I say, the camera pans to the fireplace, even if there's no fireplace. So like in old movies, right? So it doesn't happen, but it is an option. Right now in this campaign that I play, I have a really cliche bard who is basically a woman chaser. So this happens for him many times, but he is that sort of player that enjoys this, and every other person in the team just roll their eyes, but they go along with it. It is a funny thing, and they don't mind. But if they did, I'd have to do something about it. I also had a player who was actually afraid of blood. And of course, this is medieval fantasy. So my descriptions are that the blood sprays all over, right? Because you're fighting with melee weapons, you're fighting with swords. So these are huge gashes that that ooze blood and everything. So my descriptions are pretty vivid. I am not, I'm not in love with gore or something, but that is the way that combat used to look, right? It was not a small gunshot wound and people fall on the floor. No, it is actually a huge wound and there is a lot of blood. And she didn't really like to hear the descriptions, so I had to hold myself back a little bit for these descriptions to not be, so vivid. So, a good connection with the players is really a must.
See, my DMs are so much meaner than that. So I don't mind descriptions and whatnot. What gets me is sound effects. So so we have a professional voice actor who plays in ours.
Wow.
And he's so good at those disgusting sound effects. And he knows that it makes me squirm. So he's like, oh, I'm going to crank it up to an 11. Instead of being like, oh, you don't like this? Let me hold back. He's like, I'll do more.
But I managed to do that because I created a drider, and my team encountered a drider, and I make these spider sounds that the kittiness armor that it makes, and I did this with my mouth, and one of the players was like, no, don't do this. So yeah, I have one situation when I've done that. Yeah.
The last few questions are not so much about Maciej, the DM, but more about Maciej, the person. But if they bleed together, it happens. I feel like becoming a DM just kind of becomes you. It's no longer like, oh, this is the thing that I do on the side. It just becomes you.
It does.
If you could recommend a book, a TV series, and a movie.
Oh, there is a lot of these. If I could recommend a series, it would actually be Vikings.
Well, you're the second person to recommend that one. It was a good series.
Yeah, it was. I have not watched the new episodes, but still, it is great to see the pre-Christian world. Because our automatic understanding of Vikings is they're barbarians, is they're cruel, and in some cases you realize that, judging by today's standards, the Vikings might have actually been more civilized than the Christians in England, who they fought with. Period. Anyway, so
English is hard, man. I'm not judging you one bit.
Just like treating women. With Vikings, women were equal to men. They were warriors. When the ships came to England, the English fighters were amazed to see women and men fighting side by side, because it was normal. If I could suggest a book, just from the top of my head, because I am not prepared, I would like to.
We don't tell you that before. I could give you those questions at the beginning and let you think about it the whole interview.
Yeah.
But I'm a DM, so I like to see you panic.
Yeah. So the book that I'd like to recommend is Anansi Boys by Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
And this is a great book for anyone who would like to write stories. One of the biggest advice, the advices that are common is like your characters. So every character that you create, you should like or at least understand. And Neil Gaiman has that. And if you take Nancy Boyce and you look at the characters that even are bad guys, and he writes with some sympathy for them, because that is the way they are. So that is a great advice, because if you create a character that you like, even if the character is evil, then the character seems alive. So what can I suggest as a movie? Okay, just from the top of my head, Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson. It is a wacky film, and it actually portrays a little bit of my region, a little bit of Poland, a little bit of Czech Republic, a little bit of Hungary you can find in there. And it shows you the world Of course, this is a satirical, wacky kind of a portrayal of the world, of a world long gone, of a world even before, long before the Second World War, the world with fabulous hotels and beautiful buildings and characters and people traveling across Europe in trains, and of course political unrest and in dangerous times which have ended a world that was. So that is Grand Budapest Hotel.
Before we ask the last question, what you were saying you had a YouTube channel. You know, talk a little bit about what your YouTube channel's about, what it's called.
Sure. My YouTube channel is Boxcar Merbein. It is the first and last name of my first character I've created of a dwarf fighter battle master, and the character died because he insulted a white legendary dragon. My fault. It's a challenge that I will be recording 180 videos daily, at least 13 minutes, and I've created 140 something so far. I'm creating content about D&D only. I've also recorded some videos about a certain Kickstarter project. It's Dungeons and Lasers. It is a modular plastic dungeon which you can rearrange, attach, and attach the tiles to each other and create a different dungeon every time. They actually broke every single stretch goal, and I have tons of extras for this. I have some minis, and because this is a Polish company, I was able to get that before everyone. So that's why I decided to do some videos in English and show an unboxing and how it all works on there. It's probably one of the videos that you have seen. Because it is still unpainted. I've promised to paint this in 2 weeks, but my life has been a roller coaster lately, so I have no time for crafting whatsoever. But I'm planning to break the dry spell and do it again. And as usual, my goal is to bring new people to the hobby. So I will probably be doing some basics videos in Polish to bring in people, because I really want different people to try that. I've told you the way that I've started is the only people that when I started were people who were really hardcore about it, and I've maybe this is not a popular opinion, but I think this actually is something that everyone can find something for them in it. Is people who are perfect strangers, they start playing together and suddenly they're friends. And people who already know each other become even closer. And that is a paradox because they pretend to be someone else and yet they get to know each other better.
Agreed completely. Are you ready for the last question? It's the most
Yes.
I don't know if it will work because you live in Poland, but we will try. Dirty Dancing or Footloose?
Footloose.
Footloose.
Come on, Footloose.
What?
I mean,
Why?
but Footloose is for me only because Dirty Dancing was a girl's movie, meaning it was like a love story. It was too cutesy, and Footloose is about being a rebel. It's about facing the man. It's about that's about revolution.
That's why I like Dirty Dancing, because Footloose is about like a whole town revolting, whereas
Yes.
Dirty Dancing is one girl who was told to act a certain way and be a certain way, and she was like, "No, fuck you."
Yeah, I understand. So that's why you think it's great, because it's a girl's movie. I mean, not saying that it's bad. It's just not for me. Footloose was the thing. Kevin Bacon, come on, legendary rebel.
So people either go Footloose, Kevin Bacon, or they go Dirty Dancing, Kevin Bacon. It's one way or the other. It's great. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this,
No
Maciej.
problem. No problem. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It's been fantastic. And don't forget, you can catch Clash of Quests every Saturday, 1900 UTC, to watch 6 Forever DMs make D&D harder than it needs to be because we hate ourselves. Thank you. Have a good morning, good night, good evening, whatever time you watch this at. Be lucky.
Goodbye.